Welcome to Trust Stories by Relate, a series about real conversations, authentic connection, and what it takes to build trust in the modern world. Each episode, we sit down with leaders, coaches, and changemakers to uncover the pivotal moments that shape them and the lessons they've learned about trust, leadership, and human connection along the way.
Tey Bannerman, welcome to Trust Stories by Relate.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tom.
It's great to have you on, and I provided an introduction into who you are and what you do, but I'd love to hear in your words, Tey, what do you spend most of your time on at the moment, and who are you trying to help?
I'd say I spend most of my time right now on two things. One, helping companies essentially work out what to do with AI. I think it's one of the biggest questions that a lot of organizations have, that's a lot of that is using my background from McKinsey and as a software engineer that's had hands-on experience to really help them understand the elements that need to come together based on this specific context. And then the other thing that I do, which is slightly more purpose-driven, is I help kind of up-and-coming companies who have kind of real purpose, who have a real kind of mission statement aligned to human values. I help them grow and thrive.
Okay, so you're really trying to cross the intersection between AI and being a force for good for humanity. Is that?
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah.
Or, AI not replacing humans, but helping humans, making them more effective.
Yeah. And maybe the third thing I do is I write on platforms like LinkedIn, and I share information for free to help others who are tackling similar questions to kind of think through, hey, how could I make a difference too?
And so you mentioned McKinsey. So you're a former partner at McKinsey. You were there for many years. So what's the biggest difference? Leaving the juggernaut and starting your own business.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest difference is probably the number of people and resources that you have access to at a large company like that, where almost anything you need to get done, you can shoot off an email and it gets done. And being independent, I have to do almost all those things myself. Yeah.
I mean, I've made the same leap into running my own business as opposed to being in the big corporate, and the platform. The business card was an amazing cloak of security, right? And depending on the brand, hopefully a very big purveyor of trust. We used to say when I worked at BlackRock, for example, that, the card will get you in the door, but it won't keep the door open.
Correct.
But, you leave that and then the door is harder to open. Because you don't have that logo. I don't know. Is that something that resonates with you?
It does, and I mean, and it's something I almost didn't realize until I left McKinsey, where doors I expected to be open were suddenly slightly narrower, and then I mean, you almost have this, I don't know, just this air of confidence that comes with being in a large company that's well known, where you can kind of walk into any room and that's the tag or the label that's on you, and then it's not until you leave where you go, wait a minute, I don't have that tag anymore.
Yeah, it's a little bit like, I've always admired people in the creative sphere, right? Like artists, performers, because they're really putting their sort of heart and soul on the line. Every time an artist has an exhibition, they put so much of themselves into that. And I think when you work for a big company, there's not as much of that. And then you come into running your own business, and then suddenly I feel like it is more of that. It's a much more vulnerable position.
Absolutely.
Which is, to link it back to the trust equation and what we measure at Relate, vulnerability is such a key part to building connection. So it should be a positive of building trust. But do you think it's easier or harder uh, in your current position versus before, or are they just pros and cons?
Yeah. I think in many ways it's easier because I think without the cloak of a big company, you're forced to be more vulnerable, and so I found that my name is now my brand, and therefore if I can work to build trust and build kind of a profile where people trust me because of what I put out there, what I publish, that makes it easier when I do start a conversation with someone because they've almost kind of seen a little bit of me from what I have out there. And it's not kind of me publishing as McKinsey or publishing as X company, it's me publishing as myself. And
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I wouldn't have said this a year ago when I had just become independent. It was more of a slog, but kind of, once you build up that equity, so to speak, it becomes a little bit easier. But it does require a lot of vulnerability to get there.
Yeah, yeah. So, I'd love your perspective on go to market. You help companies take tech to large enterprises.
Yeah.
Go to market is the buzzword. I think one of the fastest growing jobs out there at the moment is a go to market
Yeah.
engineering,
Yeah.
right? And so, um, but my experience with it is that it's getting really hard. There's a lot of stuff out there. We're all getting
Yeah.
slugged with message and message
Yeah.
after
Yeah.
message on email, on social media, and so much so that I don't read 98% of them, and
Yeah.
everyone I speak to is in the same boat. So how do you cut through? How do you build relationships in this environment when everything feels so automated and uh, 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 disconnected?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the stat that probably encompasses this all is that in 2025, the amount of AI generated content in the world surpassed the amount of human generated content that had ever been created. And
Is that
so,
right?
yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
know that. Wow,
So,
that had ever been created.
yeah, yep, yeah.
Wow.
So, so in the space of a few years of people being able to easily generate content with AI, we've just seen a balloon. So to your point, there's just so much more out there. People are being bombarded with so many more messages and emails and LinkedIn messages. And, and I think part of it is that it's now much easier to just create content. There are tools out there that allow you to go, hey, find me 100,000 people that meet this criteria and send some kind of personalized message to them. So I do think the two things that I'm seeing really cut through are almost what you said, being vulnerable. So kind of being able to develop a profile where people feel they have a personal connection with you and therefore are more likely to trust you as an entity more so than whichever company you represent. And so I'm seeing a lot of founders and a lot of kind of leaders of companies work more on developing their personal profile than developing the company's profile because they know that their voice and their following is going to lead to
Mm.
customers more so than the company having a voice. So and having an authentic voice. So I think that's one big one. I think the second big one is trying more things, which is kind of counterintuitive because we're saying, there's more out there, but I mean, you have to play the game as well.
Yeah,
And so I think
yeah,
without
yeah,
contributing to the to the chaos, you kind of
yeah.
could very easily get left behind. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, yeah, work harder or work and work smarter and do more things is. I mean, nothing's changed with that one, right? Like,
yeah, yeah,
you work hard, hopefully you get the results. But then what we're going to see is that that's going to mean more and more content. If everyone does that, we're going to get more, not
yeah, yeah,
less, of stuff. And I mean, what's the natural evolution of that, right? Are we all how are we going to, as individuals, deal with that?
yeah, yeah,
And as we do more, that would be my first questions. How as individuals do we deal with
yeah.
that to
I
keep our
mean,
sanity?
I think there's just going to be a natural kind of defense mechanism that kicks in. I mean, on the technology front, just like spam filters came in and now it's just, default for every email service to have spam filters. I think we're going to have just kind of, I guess, quality filters or whatever you want to call them that are very clever at only filtering in things that you would find relevant at that point in time, or just summarizing things for you and going rather than reading individual messages, you get daily or hourly summary to go, hey, you know, here's a condensed view of your messaging. So I think that's the natural defense mechanism that's going to kick in, and I think people are going to gravitate towards services that have those defense mechanisms built in.
Yeah.
um so yeah,
So
and
it's
which will
AI to fight the AI.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
then which will lead probably to people developing systems to circumvent those systems, and yeah, I think the fact that it's getting easier to work harder will mean that we're probably in this never-ending cycle. Yeah.
yeah. And do you think so? It's a really important, interesting point you made about founder-led content, and certainly
Mm,
that's near and dear to my heart, being a founder and trying to do that. What about for the typical person working for a big company?
mm,
I was talking to Charlie Green, the author of The Trusted Advisor, just last week on this show, and he was talking about what individuals can do when institutional trust is sort of in wholesale decline, partly
mm.
because of what we're talking about. So,
Yeah,
do you think that we're going to see individuals within companies trying to be building their profile and being more vulnerable and selling themselves
yeah,
as much
yeah.
as they are the company? I mean, there's always been a bit of that, but do you see that as like a natural evolution of this?
I do, and I think, I mean, for many reasons. I think one reason is that kind of it makes you distinctive in an era where people are increasingly worried that kind of their roles or jobs are going to be replaced by AI systems. So I think that's one element. I think another element is that the skill sets that employers are increasingly looking for are skill sets more around the ability to build trust and the ability to communicate well and the ability to be
Mm.
creative is less so than the more kind of task oriented or mechanical values. And so I think kind of having a way as an individual to say, I I've developed the skills or the ability to build trust well, or I'm someone who's trustworthy. I think it's going to be huge, and I think we're probably going to see kind of systems where it's badge based or something that allow people to go, hey, here's my profile, and this is my a verified view of kind of the soft skills that I have. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's going to take some relinquishing of control by company leadership, isn't it? Like
Yeah, yeah,
if
yeah,
you want your employees to truly express themselves,
yeah.
then you're going to have to, I guess, trust them to represent
Mm,
your brand uh,
yeah, yeah.
in a way which is additive when they're expressing themselves. I remember when I was, when LinkedIn first came out, we were banned from using it. We weren't allowed to use it. We could
Yeah,
only
yeah,
repost what the company said, and
yeah.
it was ridiculous. And no one looked at any of it. Do you think that corporates are moving fast enough in that way?
No, I don't. I mean, there's still companies that either outright ban or kind of limit people's use of LinkedIn, and I think kind of a lot of, especially larger companies, still have this mindset of the employee the views of the employee are reflective of the views of the company. I think that needs to change. I think the distinction, almost kind of like the separation between church and state, the separation between individual and company. I think
Yeah.
a lot of companies need to move on that. Otherwise, I can see a world where employees choose where they work based on kind of whether a company kind of allows them to be themselves.
Yeah, it's really interesting because we all hate the scripted content, right? Where
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
as soon as you feel like you're getting the corporate line, as soon as you
yeah,
feel like you're getting the PR angle, you kind of just shut down,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so I think salespeople or customer relationship people who are, that are forced to just toe the company line aren't going to be effective.
yeah, yeah,
Arguably, they're not now. It's only going to get worse.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, what would you be building now if you were starting out and you were putting all of your uh, software, your software development skills, your background in place, looking at the landscape that's out there,
Yeah,
where AI has taken us so far? What would you be focused on?
yeah. I mean, so what I see is that there are a lot of tools and software and platforms coming out that are very task oriented and that use AI models or kind of, AI technology to essentially kind of replace a task, like note takers, for example. There are now an abundance of AI note taking apps out there, which are essentially designed to, transcribe meetings, give you to-dos, give you summaries. However, connected to what we're talking about, there is very little out there that helps people build trust in meetings and shows people, hey, did you exhibit trust building behaviors? So, to answer your question directly, I would focus on some kind of on tools or platforms that help humans connect with each other, because I think increasingly everything else is going to become a commodity. Technology that transcribes things, that's going to become built into ChatGPT.
Yeah.
But technology that helps humans connect, that's going to be harder to replicate, especially if you have a science-based foundation behind what you're measuring and what you're allowing people to do.
Yeah, because it's almost like the tools that are out there now that are creating all this content, right? The
Yeah,
competition
yeah,
for eyeballs and content. It's almost like we're trying to use AI to replace the human in the sales
yeah,
process.
yeah, 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 yeah,
So it's actually more disconnecting than connecting.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Um,
It's
People have trouble.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I
sorry,
think
go on.
when you look at kind of some of the macroeconomic, or not even, sorry, not macroeconomic, some of the macro factors, like the loneliness epidemic, and people kind of having a more of a longing to kind of do in person events, for example. I think that's all leading to a place where if you can have a company that facilitates that in some way, I think that's going to be huge. I remember speaking to someone recently who was a founder of a company that runs in person networking events, but it's networking where you don't come in with your title or the company you work for. It's all around kind of what are you here for today. So there are no names or titles, and it's an environment that just fosters connection. And she was saying that in the last 12 months, attendance has just skyrocketed. They haven't done any marketing, but people just want to attend these events, want that connection. And so I think similar to what we're talking about in terms of building trust, building connection with others, I think companies that focus on that are really going to thrive.
Where does remote work sit in all of this?
Yeah.
And and the feeling of connection and engagement. I mean, it doesn't matter what statistic you look at, employee engagement scores or surveys show
Yeah.
engagement is falling through the floor. Where does that sit in all of this
Yeah. I
conversation?
mean, I think it's an important element that didn't exist 10 years ago. So, um, but I remember reading some really interesting research after COVID that essentially showed that companies that are fully remote, where everyone is remote, um, typically have kind of above average employee sentiment. Companies that are
Really?
fully everyone's in person also have above average. Companies that try and have this hybrid model, everyone's less happy. And it also showed that meetings are less effective when you have a mix of people in person and a mix of people remote. And so it, I mean, a lot of it
I
points
mean,
to,
that speaks to me.
yeah,
100%
yeah,
speaks to me. So I thought one of the great things about COVID was when you started doing these, team meetings, everyone
yeah,
had their own little piece of real estate
yeah,
suddenly
yeah,
on
yeah,
the call. You
yeah,
had your own little box, and it was sort of like the meeting suddenly was democratized.
yeah,
Whereas
yeah,
previously, you'd be all in a boardroom,
yeah, yeah,
and the board, or you might be in several boardrooms, and some boardrooms might have 10
yeah,
people and some might
yeah,
have
yeah,
one person, and the person that was by themselves just couldn't get a look in.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah. And I
Yeah.
do think a lot of kind of the, the back to work 2 days a week or 3 days a week mandates kind of almost cause this, I don't know, like unnecessary confusion. I think kind of knowing, okay, I work for a fully remote company or I work for a fully in person company, and that's the mode that we're always in, and there's no ambiguity. I remember kind of, also hearing theory that that's in the future, that's how people are going to choose their employer primarily. It's, are they remote or are they in person? And some people have a preference for one, some people have a preference for other,
I mean,
but
you
yeah,
see this now. There's website, there's businesses that are, it's remotework.com or something.
yeah,
There's,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's,
yeah,
recruitment for only remote work. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting perspective. I remember when we started, I was in a role after COVID, and we were told that we needed to be back in the office 2 days a week. But the problem was that's all leadership did. They just said you
yeah,
need to be in the office 2 days a week. They didn't say what day. They
yeah,
didn't facilitate any um, on-site uh, uh,
mm,
activity. So I always said, if you want people to come into the office and be there at the same time, throw on lunch. It's going to be, a very small part of your overall budget. And people have connected over food over for thousands of years. If you want people to connect, maybe that's something to do. But my point was, if you don't, structure that time in the office, then people are going to just come into the office and
yeah,
end up on Zoom calls,
yeah,
which is
yeah,
crazy.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's it. And I think, I mean, you see that the companies that, I mean, very few companies have actually done it well, and seen kind of positive employee sentiment as a result of those mandates. And so, I do think you either have to be in one camp or the other. I think kind of, yeah, yeah,
And have you seen what makes the companies that are remote? Have you seen what makes it successful? Like, is there a magic sauce that makes it successful in the sense that, and again, this is very basic, but my hypothesis is that you have sort of two camps here, two competing sets of needs. You have employees who
yeah,
want the flexibility to work remotely,
yeah,
and then you have leaders who are worried that about the productivity of those workers.
yeah, yeah.
And so, and that they don't have as much information about what's going on.
Uh-huh.
So, how do you marry those two things up?
Yeah, I mean, there's some fantastic fully remote companies that have been doing it a long time. I remember 10 years ago, I worked for a fully distributed remote company that, their headquarters were in the States, but, we had people from all over the world. And what worked fantastically well was, one, having clear structure, but like lightweight structure. So I knew that every morning at 9:30 a.m. there'd be a 20-minute meeting with the rest of the team, and that in that meeting we all talked about our priorities for the day. What was our check-in? There was also a checkout at the end of the day. And it was the end of my day, but for some it was the start of their day. But in the checkout, it was, okay, what did we do the previous day? Were there any blockers? But within that structure, you also had the license, if you were blocked on anything or stuck, to be able to reach out to, your manager or to anyone really, to go, hey, can you help me with this? And so you knew that there was a support system in place. There was accountability that came with the check-ins and checkouts. But then
Yes.
outside of that, you had the freedom, which meant that you almost had this ownership of your work. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I think the accountability piece is key, right? I mean,
yeah,
this is what the statistics will say that accountability is key to employee engagement.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
when you come into the office, you're accountable for all sorts of things: the way you
mm,
look, the way you interact with people. You need that same accountability in a remote setting as well. It's different, but it's the
yeah,
principle's the same. Yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah. So Tay, what are the this is I've really enjoyed this discussion. What are the so you mentioned helping companies with AI. What are the top two or three sort of things that you have been impressed by or that have caught your eye over the past couple of months that have kind of blown your mind with AI um, and think are going to be a real game changer? It
Yeah,
could
I mean
be anything.
that's a great question. I'm probably kind of the most recent one is kind of basically like the whole Claude bot thing where you have fully autonomous AI agents that have essentially full visibility and control over your entire computer, and the fact that they problem solve and they find novel solutions when you give them a task to do. So I remember kind of like a found had a catch up with a friend who had it installed on his computer and was talking to it via WhatsApp, and basically went, "Hey, book me a restaurant. Book me this restaurant." And it went, tried the website, worked out it didn't have a booking thing, and so then it went, okay, I need to call the restaurant. So let me download a text to voice app. Let me connect to pay for a service that gives me a phone number, phone up the restaurant, use the text to voice app to have a conversation, make the booking, and then report back to my mate to say, hey, I've
It's
made the
amazing.
booking without being prompted in any way. And so, I mean, that was mind blowing. And I think one thing I'm also kind of increasingly impressed by is I'm seeing quite a few companies take research that's been around for a while and now use kind of the capabilities that a lot of AI models have to be able to make that research very practical. I mean, we touched upon the trust equation earlier. I think, for a long time, there were very manual ways to measure kind of, the trust equation and the parameters behind it. Now, you have tools and platforms like Relate that are able to plug into any virtual meeting and give people their scores and give people insights. I think kind of, yeah, to be able to move into a world where a lot of that kind of heavy research backed academic work can now be made practical and people can see real benefit from it is quite exciting.
Yeah, it is amazing what you can measure now.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
often say, 20 years ago, if someone asked, "How many steps have you taken today?" you would have laughed at them.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And today, it's a very reasonable question because we're all wearing things like our Apple Watches and tracking all of
Yeah,
these metrics, and that was all made possible by wearable tech. AI now completely transforms what we can measure and
yeah.
again and so yeah, relate is a great example of that. Last question, Tay. If you were entering the workforce or you're in the early stages of your career,
Uh-huh.
what advice would you give people today to make them AI ready? What are one or two things that you would be doing to make sure that you're building your readiness for this rapidly changing world?
Yeah, I'd say one, really understand how AI models work. There's some fantastic videos on YouTube just explain the foundations, fundamentals of large language models and so on. I think that
Yeah,
starts to give you a real grounding in what are the limitations, what are some of the risks, what are some of the things that could go wrong, even in terms of things like people's cognitive abilities degrading over time as they start to rely more on AI. So I think that's one thing. And the other
yeah,
thing is really start to how can I use these tools to help me in my day to day, to help kind of take the load off a lot of the menial tasks that I might do day in day out, so that you kind of make more time for the work that matters. Yeah.
yeah. No, I think that's right. And make more time for the work that matters. And I think what I heard you say before is the work that matters is the human connection
Yeah,
side of thing
yeah,
and the way that
exactly,
you interact with other people. That
exactly,
is something
exactly,
AI can never take away, and will be in hot demand.
exactly.
Tay, great to have you on the show. I really enjoyed this chat. I want to get you back on again, perhaps in a couple of
Love to.
months.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, always enjoyed talking to you, my friend, and we'll leave it there. Thanks a lot.
Amazing. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to Trust Stories by Relate. To explore more ways to build trust in your conversations, meetings, and teams, visit relate.us. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow, rate, and share it with someone who values building real connections.